Sequels are a bit tricky. Games, books, or movies, they can get it right or they can get it terribly wrong. But what about this one? This is the Moto Razr 5G, and it's technically not a successor but more of an incremental upgrade. But the question is, does it make the foldable form factor a bit more appealing? To answer that question, I tried out the Moto Razr 5G for a day, and here are my first impressions of it. But before we get started, let me quickly remind you to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so that you know exactly when we put out our latest videos. Now let me give you a quick TLDR. The Moto Razr 5G is basically the same Moto Razr that was launched earlier this year, but with a few upgrades. Major or minor? Let's find out.
The plastic body is gone in the favor of glass and metal sandwich. You now have a Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G SoC up from the Snapdragon 710, paired with up to 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigabytes of internal storage. At the back or front, depending on how you hold it, the Razr now has a 48 megapixel primary camera. The selfie camera on the foldable display has also been bumped up to 20 megapixels from a measly 5 megapixels. Then there's the battery. This one is a minor upgrade. So now it's a 2800 mAh pack, which is like 300 mAh improvement from the previous gen. But it is still below 3000 mAh to keep the smartphone slim. And finally, Motorola has also tweaked the hinge a little bit so that the foldable display is better secured. Moto says that the gap between the two sides of the display is now thinner than a piece of paper. Of course I tried that, but I didn't completely agree with that claim.
So what is it like to use the new Razr?
Honestly, my very first impression was noticing the flaunt value of this thing. It's just so compact and fashionable. I immediately felt really important for some reason while holding this phone. The glass is a nice touch, but it also makes it a fingerprint magnet. The next thing that I saw was the fidget potential of the Moto Razr 5G. You see, unlike the Galaxy Z Fold 2, this one flips vertically, making it easier to fold and unfold with one hand. And it is sort of satisfying. Motorola did say that this hinge has been tested for more than 2 lakh folds and unfolds, which according to Motorola is roughly about 3 years of heavy use. If I keep doing this at this rate, I fear I might surpass that in just a little bit over a year. Also, it takes a bit of time to get used to the folding action, especially if you're doing it one-handed. While the frame of the smartphone has this slight chamfer, I would have preferred a lip or an indentation where you can insert your thumb to open it more confidently. Because of the way the hinge is designed, you get 3 creases instead of 1. This may be off-putting to you, but it didn't bother me much. The folding display is good, and although the refresh rate is still 60 Hz, it still has good contrast and vibrant colors. And more importantly, the texture is really nice. So you'd wanna use it more. Sadly, unlike the Galaxy Z Flip, the Razr isn't designed for half-folded use. So you miss out on some of the cool functionality offered by Samsung's Flex mode. I would have loved to place this phone half folded on a table while having lunch and watching something on YouTube instead of awkwardly resting it on something. The phone's packaging actually doubles up as a stand-cum amplifier, but you really cannot take it anywhere. Yeah, I can watch videos on the secondary display on the front, but you know what? Let's talk about that for a moment. I actually like it and loathe it at the same time. It is a bit too small for enjoying any content and has a tendency to be really hyper and wake up all the time. But this really does help at times when you cannot flip the Razr open, be it notifications or just changing the track on your playlist. It just makes those tiny things really easy. Typing is a bit awkward though, but you could still be sorted if you have swipe typing enabled. The phone runs a very clean version of Android 10, which is called MyUX. Except for some really useful gestures and the classic Astro Odyssey game, you have no bloatware and a rather vanilla Android experience. And while minimalist, you can also customize it.
While I cannot comment on the performance of the phone in detail this early, be it the processor or the battery, it does feel snappy overall.
Weirdly, because of where the components are fitted in the phone, only the bottom half feels warm when this phone is subjected to heavy tasks. Gaming is surprisingly fun too. While the Razr doesn't fold halfway, you can bend it just a little bit to have a really comfortable grip while playing games. And remember I was talking about the texture of the display? Yeah, that does wonders too. The phone ships with an 18-watt charger, a power cable, and a Type-C to 3.5mm jack adapter. Very thoughtful? Thank you. Also thoughtful is that the case these accessories come in can easily be used as a sunglasses holder. Thanks for that too. Let's come to the camera. In terms of specifications at least, the 48 megapixel sensor can now finally go head to head with most mainstream phones. But again, I only had limited time with the device and so I cannot give a final verdict about the photo quality yet. Oh, and you also have that smiley face thing. But more than anything, I'm happy that you now have a better selfie shooter so that you don't have to rely on the main camera for everything. If you're still using the main camera, here's a pro tip. Hold it upside down. The phone agrees with that orientation and that way you would be able to hide your double chin and look a little bit less awkward.
So far, my impressions about the Moto Razr 5G have mostly been positive, but there are a few things that really annoy me.
Both the lock button and the volume rocker are really tiny. In fact, the latter is precisely the size of my iPhone's lock button. So you will have to make an anxious jump every now and then if you want to turn down the volume. You will also do some acrobatics if you want to reach the top of the screen for some reason because of how tall it is. Luckily, the fingerprint reader does support gestures. Also in the camera app, everything is beautifully organized on the bottom, but that settings button sits on the top right corner. It could have easily been accommodated on the bottom. To sum it up, if you're the kind of person who's bored with the conventional form factor of phones, who loves attention, and more importantly, who has the money, you're going to love the Moto Razr 5G. Sure, it has its own flaws, but you know what? It is now even more refined and more powerful than its predecessor. What's your favorite foldable smartphone? Let us know in the comments. And for all things tech, log on to gadgets360.com.